And he was, captivated by the rich history of this site, the kind of modern tragedies of the student massacre and then the earthquake, but also its ancient history, the cathedral and then the pyramids. Or, not the pyramid, but the excavation for, early native culture. And from this series, he had about 20-something pictures, which he presents together. He had a show, he was nominated for this Bank Prize in Portugal this year and was given this space in a museum to show the work, and he presented this whole long series that wrapped around 3 walls of this kind of cinematic walk through that site. And I think that's like another series that he's done that, like Brasilia and like the Obama inauguration, is about the architecture and space of a place of political significance at a time of political significance. And I think, like, as he builds that idea in different places in the world, it becomes more powerful and resonant from series to series. Unlike Alex Morel, who's basically had one series for 15 years, and Ivan Venegas, who's had 2 or 3, he's had a number of them. So, and he loves to do these bursts of energy in places like the Taiwan work. So, I don't know, by this point he has about 7 series or projects that constitute his body of work. And interestingly enough, with the whole conventional wisdom that you have to have an MFA to succeed in the art world, he doesn't have an MFA. And he isn't part of academia. He just has a degree in film from a school in Sao Paulo, and the certificate from ICP in New York, and just his experience working, documenting artists' work, and then becoming an artist himself and becoming aware of contemporary art issues through meeting artists and looking at their work and being part of a community and in a place where there is a significant art community. So he's an example that I guess is in contrast to the others. And now the 4th example is Monica Rosansky, who's from Mexico City, now living in New York City. She's a little bit younger than the others, who are all in their 30s or 40 at the most, and Monica, I think, is in her early 30s. So basically the same generation. She had a really significant educational experience in Mexico City, where she's from, working at the Centro de la Imagen when Javier Ramirez Limon was in charge of workshops. And she took a lot of those workshops, and she also worked in the office, so she was exposed to a lot of those photographers personally and a lot of the ideas before she came to ICP. So when she came to ICP, she was already one of the more advanced students. And the series that she did as a student there was a really bold portrait project that she did in Central Park called the Mirror Project, where she took a large format camera that she put a 2-way mirror on so that the subject looking into the camera would see a reflection of themselves and would have a confrontation with themselves. If you saw her, I mean, Monica is a very pretty, blonde, petite, quiet woman who you wouldn't assume would boldly go into Central Park and go up to strangers and invite them to be in a project like this. But actually, the best work that she does is with strangers in a version of street photography. And she's done portrait projects in Mexico City as well. After ICP, she stayed in New York and she had internships working for magazines, but she would also go back to Mexico City to visit her family and to live there for a while. And most of her exhibition experience has been in Mexico through her Mexican connections. She was included in a group show at Aperture last year in New York, and that's her. And she also had a solo show at PS 122 Gallery in New York a few years ago, where she showed this project. But I think she's been confronted by how competitive New York is for an emerging photography to sort of get editorial work or get shown as an artist, and I think that's been very frustrating for her. But she continues to live there because she, for romantic reasons, she met her current husband in New York, an English actor turned conceptual artist who moved to New York, and now they're both based there. And I actually don't think that's good for her work. I went to her wedding and celebrated that. I think it's great. He's a great guy. But, you know, I think the best thing for her work would have been to be here more, consolidating her connections, her experience, her contacts, and continuing to make work in Mexico. In a way, I think that her demographics and who she chose to photograph in this series is more diverse, probably, than a typical American photographer would have done. And I appreciate that perspective on New York and American things that she has that's unique. I think she's really sensitive and you know, really visual too, but I love the idea of what she could do in Mexico. And this is one series that she's been working on in Mexico City about the maids who walk the dogs for very wealthy people in, you know, a very wealthy neighborhood in Mexico City, who sometimes bring their children along with them. And they're, of course, the pets of their employers. And I think it's, you know, an interesting way to talk about class and